Hello, and thank you for joining our Master Control hosted webinar today. Today, we're going to be talking about change management and some of the best practices that you need to know to remain compliant. Today, we have Stephanie Jones. She's one of our senior product managers here at Master Control, and she's going to provide you with some excellent information. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to her.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Jones. I'm a senior product manager here at Master Control. I've been here as an employee for getting close to 15 years now. I'm also a former customer, spent a lot of time in life sciences in both food and pharma manufacturing. So I've been in your shoes and I've felt your struggles. So hopefully I'm going to be able to help you a little bit today. So let's start off by looking at what I hope you will see as takeaways, things that you'll get out of this little event. First thing we want to do is we want to give you what are the regulations and the guidelines that are shaping change management as it is today. We want to secondarily talk about what are some of the common barriers that people are dealing with and what are the modern best practices around managing your change and risk, because risk is inherent to change. And we want to help you, with some ideas to overcome those. And third, we want to talk about using your change management data to help you optimize your processes and show that you're maturing in terms of how well you handle change in your organization. And the fourth takeaway, we'd like to give you a couple of examples of how you can use advanced digital tools to solve some of these problems that we're going to talk about and streamline your change management processes. So first, we'll talk about change management as part of your quality management system. And we'll start with what are the general principles? What is a change management process? And the American Society of Quality put out a definition, and they talk about the fact that change management process is going to include things such as the actual process you're following, the tools that you're using to manage your change, how you plan, validate, and implement your change. And of course, as any good quality person knows, you've got to be able to verify the effectiveness of the changes you're putting into place. So, one of the things that we know as life sciences or quality individuals is that quality management systems are not static. They are living, breathing, constantly changing, and therefore we need change management. We also know that change, whether it's to your QMS or to any other aspect of your organization, brings with it risk and, of course, disruption. And those are things that we need to work on managing. And lastly, you need to have a systematic, documented control process that you consistently use so that you can defend yourself whenever you're in an inspection. These are things you all know as life sciences manufacturers. So how does change management fit in with all your other quality processes? Well, of course, change management, it's definitely bi-directional. It's really almost symbiotic. You really can't have a QMS without having change management. You can't do a CAPA without change management. You can't do change management without a CAPA, as an example. So it is really a totally integrated concept. You have product failures or non-conformances. You may issue a CAPA, but you're going to have a change plan in place for how you're going to execute all the things that your CAPA says you need to do, as an example. If you're getting customer feedback, or maybe, unfortunately, you're receiving complaints, those are things that can certainly kick off a change management process and potentially other quality events, depending upon what that feedback or the complaint is. You've got feedback coming in from both internal audits that are happening, could be from employees who are working with your product on the line or in R&D or in the quality department or in the lab, whatever that might be. So there's feedback there that can initiate a change process. So there's all kinds of ways that change management is integrated into your quality processes.
You know, Stephanie, as you were speaking there, I think my biggest takeaway on that is that nothing happens in a vacuum in the world of quality, right? And with all of those different departments that are involved, the collaboration and the communication between those departments is so critical.
Absolutely. It is incredibly critical. I mean, you just can't work in this industry without having a great process for collecting and acting on those sorts of things. And then, of course, as we'll talk about later in this event, uh, what you can do with the data after the fact to help you trend and track and all kinds of things that we'll get to.
Absolutely.
So we'll do a quick run through here. I'm sure you all already know this, but let's just repeat to cover our bases here. But there are a variety of guidelines, regulations that are driving your change management practices. So depending upon the vertical that you're in life sciences, med device, pharma, food, whatever it might be, you're probably familiar with this list of regulations and, of course, standards. And just for clarity, a regulation is a law, a guideline is a suggested method of behaving. So let's just keep that clarification there because people often forget, and that can lead to some headaches down the road. So, the guidelines here that, again, not regulations, but are guidelines here around ISO, GAMP, IHC, PICS, etc. So you need to be aware of these depending upon what vertical you are in and know how to apply these to your change management process.
So, again, as you were speaking, something we often talk about here is efficiency and time, and that time resource is so valuable. I don't know if there's anyone out there that could not use more time in their day. And when we talk about taking a risk based approach, we're talking about maximizing that resource of time, right? Really focusing your efforts and your energy on the areas that maybe have the most risk to your organization, and then not wasting time on the other areas where there isn't as much impact.
Absolutely. And one of the things, I'm sorry,
Go
one
ahead.
of the things that people forget when they're reading, in particular, the regulations, and that's been around for 20-ish years in the CFRs, is it very specifically states to use a least burdensome and also a risk-based approach. And historically, we've unfortunately, probably out of fear, or uh, not being sure what the inspector is going to be looking for, probably do a lot of overkill. And so one of the things that you want to keep in mind is, in particular, the FDA point blank tells you use a risk-based approach, focus on high-risk things, and that will bring you back to that least burdensome approach, which, to your point, is going to give you back time you desperately need for all of the things you have on your plate.
Yeah, if I could figure out how to get 2 more hours in a day, it would be magical.
Wouldn't it though?
But unfortunately, we can't do that.
Unfortunately, we can't. So let's talk about some of the trends in change management around the issues that are being seen that are time sucks. Okay, these are things that are really hurting you, and you may not consciously realize as a life sciences organization that they are sucking time away from you that you could be doing more beneficial things. There's been a trend in inspection findings specific to change management. I mean, who isn't using some form of digital tool in their quality management system in these days? And because of that, inspectors can look at your change management more closely than they probably ever have in the past. And so the two top things that they're seeing as deficiencies, and the numbers, it's 10% for each one of these, which is really high, are issues around device control and written procedures for production and process control. Now, those are big, but they're also things that you can handle if you've got a good change management process. A lot of this is around, when you think about what's missing on either of these, It's deficient planning, not following up on your actions, having inadequate or no documentation or procedures, not putting together enough evidence. People forget. I mean, we're really good at validation and producing evidence, but you have to have evidence for anything you do in life sciences, right? If you didn't write it down or take a picture of it and sign it and date it, it didn't happen. And that applies to change management as well. Something we can totally control, and we can actually help you with that. Other pitfalls or issues that are coming up during inspections. One of the things we're not that great at around change management is planning. We tend to not plan enough. We plan, but it's fairly high level. And so what that means is, because we had weak planning, we may have additional changes at the end of this change process we're working, or even corrective actions as a result of that inefficient or deficient planning that we did up front. Then, of course, there's follow through related to that. A big one that keeps coming up in the findings are things like lack of communication and training. They're always looking at training. So, just like with everything else in life sciences, don't forget that even in your change management, you better say that you're going to train. What are you going to train on? Who are you going to train? And show me that you did do that training on that information that you documented. It's really important. So, evidence, evidence, evidence. We talked about that just a moment ago. You've got to have that evidence. And good grief, don't implement your change without getting it approved first. That has become apparently a really common finding in inspections. So some pain points, and clearly things that we can improve as life sciences companies, are, get better at planning right off the bat, right? Don't just do blanket risk assessments. You've got to have a risk management process as well as a change management process. And you've got to have that documented, and you've got to act on it. And you should be showing evidence of that. Don't leave that aside. The regulation says use a risk-based approach. So make sure you've got a good risk management process. Make sure it includes, documentation and monitoring, all of those same elements that we use for everything else we do in our quality world. We want to look at something we're probably not doing much of at all, or we're doing it but not as well as we could be doing, is looking at trends around our change management activities. Probably, you have to do AQRs, right? Annual quality reviews of your products. So you are looking at trends on those based on feedback or, CAPAs that happen and all the variety of things. But are you including change management as it relates to that, and trending on that change management so that you can use that data to help you moving forward? And of course, this one we have total control over, especially, if we use automated tools, is not including the key stakeholders or subject matter experts in our change management process. They need to be participating. They need to be there in the planning and in the communication and in the implementation. Don't leave out the important people. Those are key things that inspectors are looking at, and the things that we can work on.
So I like to think of our systems and tools as the thing that keeps us on the rails, right? So you talked about a couple of different things in there, Stephanie. You talked about training and you talked about signatures. And in your digital system can help you protect a document from going out before it's approved and signed. A digital system.
Absolutely. I mean, the beauty of having an automated system is you've got that consistent process, and it always includes the right people, and the steps always happen in order, and they get approved when they should be. And there's places to capture evidence and to kick off training if you've got a really robust, digital tool. So those are things that you really want to consider.
Yeah, and then there's that added layer of benefit when you have a digital tool that's connected and helping you keep all of those things, is your data is all in one place. And when your data is all in one place, now you can track and trend on that data. You can actually make business decisions based on what's been happening. And that's the thing that gives companies an advantage in the marketplace, is to be able to utilize that data to make better, more well-informed decisions about their business operations.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't think of an executive that I've ever worked under, much less an inspector, who would just take my word for it, right? If I could present them with good data and explain the data, I got to win. So that's the kind of thing we really want to get to with our change management process. We want data. We want to be able to analyze it. We want to be able to use it to empower ourselves and our companies.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely can't argue with the numbers.
No, you can't. That's the beauty of numbers. They're very straightforward. So let's go on a little bit and let's talk about what are change management best practices that we can put in place. You have to start somewhere. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start with planning. We've got planning and implementation, but remember, I said some of the biggest findings that inspectors are pointing out are around planning. So in order to ensure your planning is the best it can be, I direct you back to those regulations and guidelines that we talked about. You want to go back and look at your change management process with really a critical eye and look at it in terms of what does the regulation specifically state and indirectly state. And remember, least burdensome, risk-based, okay? So keep that in mind. If you're following something like PICS or GAMP, include that. Again, compare your change management process, or if you don't have one at all, the one you're building, against these regulations and guidelines. And that is the first thing you want to put in place. When you're thinking about this and planning, so you've gotten past the regulations, maybe you've got a good outline for what you think your change management process should be in terms of a best practice. You want to ensure that in the planning stage, your scope, what is the scope of the change? Remember what I said early on here is that one of the findings is we aren't doing a good enough job at planning. We're not looking at the scope of our change and remember what I said, it's causing there to be additional changes once you've completed this change or potentially CAPAs. So we want to do a better job up front with the scope of our change. We want to know how our change is going to impact other processes within our organization. We want to know where the benefits are, not only to the thing I want, that's why I'm kicking this change off, but how's that impacting you and what benefit are you going to get out of this as my peer within the organization, right? I need to put together that communication plan. Remember I said, a finding is we don't have a good communication plan or we don't have any communication plan. And we're, the age old thing where, we're not doing enough training. It's the age old finding. Every inspector, I swear, they must think I tick the box. I got them for training, So let's just train ourselves to death so they can't tick that box. Risk. We talked about risk and mitigation of risk, right? So change breeds risk and disruption. Disruption is risk. See that back and forth there? We need to mitigate that. We need to document what those risks are and we need to document what the mitigations are. And then, of course, we're going to implement our changes and we're going to show where we did that with evidence. And we're going to show how it is mitigating the risks that we pointed out. And of course, the thing probably that is hardest to remember to do is effectiveness monitoring. Why is that? Well, a lot of times you put in a change that, you implement the steps today and I'm done. But it might mean collecting a week's worth of data to see is it working. Oh, that's not so bad. But what if it's a month or a quarter or even a year's worth of data because that's the way your world works? It's so easy to forget that when those effectiveness checks stretch out into the future, right? So anything that we can do to make that more effective and ensure that those are getting done is going to be a huge win and really get you in a place of best practice. So we talked a little bit about risk management, and I keep kind of harping on this because, the FDA does specifically state using a risk-based approach, you need to have that good risk management process in addition to your change management process. So when you're thinking about risk, it's not like a checkbox sort of a thing. You need to be looking at risk all throughout your change management process, right? You need to be looking at it on the planning stage in terms of, am I looking at all the factors that are driving this change? What are the things that exist today that are making me think I need this change? What are the things that drove whatever that was that happened that makes me think I need this change? It's a bigger picture than just, I want that, so I'm going to change something. So you've got to look at the whole picture. What are all the conditions? What are the triggers? What's the background information? And document, document, document. You need to be sure in your risk management of these that you're getting the right people and the right resources involved in your change management that you're processing. Again, one of the big things that's always been hard for me when I was sitting in front of an inspector, especially, it's been 2 years, and let's don't even talk about COVID and how long it had been since they came in to inspect you. But that could have been significantly longer. And they start digging and they asked me about something that happened, 18 months ago, or God forbid, because of COVID, it was even longer ago. And maybe that person's not employed with us anymore that was involved. If it's not incredibly well documented, or the process was, wishy-washy on how we did it, I'm not going to be able to read and defend whatever we did 18 months ago or longer. And that's going to raise a red flag with your inspector. So you've really got to ensure that your change management and the risk management you're doing is well documented so that I don't care who sits down to read it in the future, it'll make sense and they can understand what was going on and what the factors were that drove it and how you mitigated the risk, etc. And of course, as I mentioned, if that person's gone and you didn't have a super nailed down process, that means you weren't consistent. And if you're not consistent, that leads to risk. Keep saying this. And so, you got to think about not only the change you're going through, but your risk management process. It needs to, in a consistent manner, look at severity, probability of occurrence, and detectability. You're doing that with your products that you're manufacturing. You need to do it with your processes as well. You've got to be able to show that consistency. It's got to be documented. So if we were doing, great periodic reviews and having this awesome, quality metrics to work against, which you may or may not have right now, a great change management process can help with that. It can help you look at the volume and the types of changes you're doing. It can help you monitor things like the timeliness of the change. Had this problem been going on for, an inordinate amount of time? Or are you so mature that you're Johnny on the spot and you're catching these things and implementing your change management process quickly and efficiently and effectively? Oh, wow, revisions. Are you doing your change management process, but going, oopsie, at the end of it, ooh, we forgot, or we didn't document, or we didn't fill in the blank, whatever that might be. So we don't want to have to do a lot of revisions. I mean, we're humans, it's going to happen from time to time. But if we can have a solid process and we stick to that process, we've got a better chance of minimizing revisions after the fact. Adequacy. How good is our change? Effectiveness, right? Are we really covering everything we needed to for this change? And is it working the way we thought it was going to? Using our data from, the changes that we've been processing, we can look at our process itself and say, wow, our process is solid, yay for us, or not so solid. Here's places where we're weak, and what can we do? We can use this data to say, here are the weak points. Let's beef those up. Let's change those under our change management process. Trends, internal audit findings. The list just goes on and on for what you could get out of your quality metrics from your change management program. And of course, with data, there's a variety of benefits that come from that. Uh, when you're using metrics and data for your change management process, your change management process gets better and better and better. You can use that data to enhance, improve, expand, optimize, whatever the words are that you like, to get your processes in a better state. And it's not just your change management process that this data is going to show you weaknesses in. It's all of the quality processes that you've got going on in your organization. Because remember, we said change management is an intricate and integral part of your entire quality management system. You can't have a quality management system without change. Remember, it's living and breathing, dynamic. So you will have change. And this data can help you manage it and help you refine it and enhance it and get better all the time. And ultimately, being able to show this to your executives, that this data, and look at the changes we're making, look how the data is trending in the right direction, whatever that direction might be. We are maturing as a quality organization based on this data and the changes we're making because of it. You can also use this with your inspector to show them. You pointed something out, we looked at our data, we made a change, we're doing better.
Not that you would ever want to argue with an inspector, Stephanie, but you can't argue against numbers, right? I think that's kind of what you're getting at. You can't, when you have the data, it's hard to refute that. So
Right. And the biggest thing, an inspector is always looking for is control, and data shows control. It can also show you're out of control, but you use that to put yourself back in control.
that's right. So this whole webinar today is about best practices. And there's a couple little things that I want to key in on here. First of all, when you have data, when you're on a connected system and you have data, that can help you develop your best practices, right? Because now
Absolutely.
you're using all of that information to create, future systems and processes. But in addition to that, when you're using a system like Master Control, who has over 1,000 customers, now you're getting best practices from your vendor that's based on data from a whole bunch of different companies. So,
Yes, it is.
yeah, your library just expanded. So, if your library is your research to figure out how to do things the right way, instead of having one book in your library, now you have thousands of books in your library. And so, you can rely on your vendor, your partner, to come to you with new ways to do things based on how other people are doing it and how other people are succeeding. And once again, I'm just going to point back to that's a huge business advantage.
Absolutely. And
Business advantage for
what
those.
you're saying really right out of the gate, you talked about we don't ever have enough time, right? We have too much to do and not enough time. And if I can take advantage of, the thousands of customers who doing the same work I'm doing, right? And why not take advantage of that instead of trying to reinvent the wheel?
Yep,
Because again, I'm giving myself time back by not reinventing that wheel.
that's
And I've also given myself the assurance based on all of those years. Master Control's got 25 years of doing this, and all of those customers' experience to put me ahead of the game quick.
Yep. So there's a saying that in the world of life, you do not have enough time to have all of the experiences yourself. You don't have enough time to make all of the mistakes yourself. So you must learn from others. And that's exactly
Absolutely.
what we're
And
talking
and
about.
even though these people might be your competitor, you know, the reality is we're all in life sciences, and our number one goal, right, is to make human life better. So if I can learn from my peer via, in our case, master control and all of that experience, why would I not take advantage of that?
Absolutely. So, Stephanie, I think you're going to give us a peek inside of Master Control to show our viewers out there how might some of these things that we've been talking about leading up to this point, how might that express itself, or how might all that stuff come together inside of a digital quality management system?
Absolutely. Let's take a look. So thinking about, not just digital tools, but advanced digital tools that are taking advantage of all of that experience that we just chatted about, and all the learnings that we've had over the years and working with a variety of customers all across life sciences. What we've done is put together tools that are going to, number one, enhance your efficiency. We just talked about that. But they're also going to help you integrate your quality processes even more so than maybe you already are doing today, because our advanced digital tools are by design set up to work with each other and to enhance each other. And now you're not just getting data from change management, but you're getting data across all of your quality events that you can analyze and use to enhance your world and your products that you're working on. And that is the beauty of advanced analytics that come out of these advanced digital tools. It's only limited by your imagination what you can do with that analytics. Uh, it's an incredible thing. Actually, it's probably the most valuable thing you actually have in your organization, and that's your data and how you use it.
I'd like to thank Stephanie for her time today and all the information she shared. I hope that all the viewers out there were able to garner some information and get some valuable tactics that you can take back to your organizations when working with your change management processes. Should you have any more information about Master Control, you can always visit our website at www.mastercontrol.com. And while you're there on the site, if you would like to see more about how the product works and some of the features and functionalities that can help you manage your quality processes, you can always request a demo there as well. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.